Hi, welcome to our little Makery shadow box kits. This is a how-to video that encompasses all of our shadow kits. We have so many different designs every single month coming up with a different one. Here are a few that we have currently that are up on the website, but this is only about half of them. So this tutorial will walk you through any of the designs. We have lots of pictures up on our social media and our website for inspiration as well. Today I'm going to walk through doing the Rocky Mountain kit. It is our most popular kit and super fun and relaxing. So I'm just going to move a few of our shadow boxes off to the side to give me a bit more room. So in your kit, you're going to have your shadow box that comes wrapped together. It comes put together in the different layers so that you know how it goes. It also comes with a stand that you paint and put together as well. So you just slot together there, and then your shadow box just sits right like that, and it's displayed like that. Then it comes with all of your paint, a paintbrush, and glue. This glue is Mod Podge and it dries clear. It takes a few minutes to dry though, so as you're painting and gluing your layers, you do want to give it some time to dry, like 10 minutes. The only thing that you might want to get is either a cloth for your paintbrush or water, so when you're changing colors, you're not mixing up your different shades. So I'm going to get started with steps. It is 2 steps. 1, paint. 2, glue. The third step could be add some detail, but that's completely up to you. I'm going to show you mostly on this kit how we can add a little bit of detail into the trees and the mountains as well to make them kind of look like a bit more like stone or 3D, some shading. But even if we do the Halloween kit, an example of this is just solid colors. Everything pops and it still looks amazing, and that was just one solid color. So just think of doing this kit and opening up this creativity as a time to relax and reduce the stress and not worry about how it's going to turn out, because it'll turn out perfect. So let's get started. One tip is I'm going to start from the bottom, and I'm just going to put my layers out kind of in a line so that I can keep track of them. Just so I know that's my bottom base. It's going to go all the way right up to here, which is my my top layer, kind of your ring. So what I do say to a lot of people for the ring is kind of maybe pick a color that's not one of the colors that you had in your main design. So if you were doing mostly dark colors, then you want it to kind of stand out. So for example, for the ocean, I did blue and white and purple and orange, and so my ring is gray, so a color that I didn't use in here at all. And same thing for my bear, it's brown because I didn't really use that color. So it just kind of frames your shadow box, so that's something you might want to consider and keep it to the last. So I kind of start at the base and I move my way up. So my base is my sky, and so this is when you get to decide, do you want it to be sunset? Do you want it to be dark? Do you want it to be light? Do you want it to be noon? So that's really the only thing. The hard part is deciding, picking your colors basically. So I'm going to do a nighttime one. So I'm going to do black for my background. And because most of this is going to be covered up when I put this shadow layer right over top of it, I'm going to make sure that I focus and make this part up here that's actually showing really quite dark. This is just acrylic paint that I'm using. And because I am using black first, I want to make sure that I have that water that I can clean out my brush with. I don't need to paint the sides yet. That's something you can do at the end before you glue it together if you want. You don't necessarily need to. It kind of depends on once you glue all your layers together, is there a lot of paint that ran over the side? Or um, did all the paint kind of stay on the front and is your shadow box just the dark uh, laser cut burnt mark? And if so, then no, you don't need to paint the side at all because it all matches with that dark black burnt look. So I'm just going over top uh, of my layer, painting it on, trying to keep it even. Again, there's no wrong way to do this. And as you're painting your sky, you might want to think, if it's daytime, do I want to put some clouds? Do I want to add some white little fluffs? If it's black, do I want to add some stars? So you might want to come back after this is dry and you might want to add some details. Remember, that was the third step. There's only really 2 steps, paint and glue. So if you want to add those details, you're more than welcome to. And that definitely helps by looking at all the inspiration pictures on social media, but it's also good with just a black sky as well. So now I'm going to move on to my mountains. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mountains, and the most important thing is I want to make sure that they're different shades so that they pop out. If I paint them all gray, that's fine. I'll get a little bit with the black burnt mark here. I'll get a little bit of definition from that, but I want to make sure that I'm painting them different colors. It does not matter if it's dark gray or dark brown to light. It doesn't matter if you have light brown, light dark, light dark. It's completely up to you. And you might paint it, wait for everything to dry, stack it, and be like, oh, I don't really like that middle layer. So you can take it out and repaint it. It's very, very forgiving. No right or wrong. It's just kind of how you want to play with it. So I'm going to take brown. And I'm going to put a little bit of brown on my next mountain too. Not as much though. And I'm also going to mix in some gray. Now I'm not wiping out my brush in between because I'm mixing the 2 colors. You could, if you wanted to, put it in the water. But I'm just going to, or you could pre-mix your mountain on the box or on a plate. But I like mixing it right on there because sometimes I can get really cool mixing colors that you wouldn't get if you mixed on a plate. But this way is a little bit more dangerous because you don't know exactly what color you're going to get. I'm going to start pulling this color up here to my edge as well. And take some of this light brown gray and I'm going to mix it over here. So I'm going to get a completely different color, different shade actually, sorry, on this mountain, but it'll be similar, but it'll be a completely different shade. And again, it's not until it dries and I see it over top of each other if I will like that shade or not. And you can kind of see the difference. So this one I mixed on here, so I have some light and I have brown and I kind of have these different lines going on. And this one, it was mostly already mixed, so I don't really have that. Now perhaps I want even a darker color for this one, so I'm going to add some brown And maybe I'll add some dark blue. So it's just going to make it a darker, different shade of brown, darker gray. But it's going to also pop against these lighter colors. And it's going to kind of look like maybe it's being hidden in the shadow, whereas these are maybe popping from the moonlight. But again, you won't really know until you put it together. And this is the same for all of the shadow boxes. The hardest part is just picking out your colors, which is going to be unique to you. No one else will have that. And I think this one, maybe I will add my gray with a little bit of brown, and then maybe I'll put a little bit of light blue in. And just pulling it up around the edge. If you don't want these to move while you're painting or have tons of paint on your fingers, you can always use masking tape or painter's tape and put it down sticky side up on your table and then place your rings on top of it, and then they won't move. Just a little side tip if you would like to do that. And then I'm on my last mountain, and it's going to be, if I look, it's going to have the trees right over it. So I really want it to pop. I want it to be really light. So I'm going to do gray, but I'm also going to mix in, instead of blue, I'm going to mix in my turquoise. Just because it pops so much, and I think it'll look great beside my trees, just because there's that green. I think it'll just give the peaks a really pretty color. And of course, I'm going a little bit faster than what you need to, just to show you how it all works, but you can take your time. You can let every layer dry if you want, and then go from there based on how it looks. So because this layer is dry, I can take my mountain and put over top and be like, oh, do I like that? Do I not like it? And then that can kind of inform how you do your next one, if you'd like. So for my forest, because it's nighttime, I want to get green, but I don't want to do just dark green. Of course, you totally can. This is just how I'm thinking as I paint. So I do want to have some green in there, but I want to add just a tiny, tiny bit of black just to darken it up a little bit. Just so you get the illusion that it's nighttime. This is still quite green. So I'm not sure if I love that color of green. That might be something that I want to go over again. feel like it got better there the second round. And then I have my water next, and then I have my banks, and then my moon. So my water, I would love for it to be super, super light, because maybe the reflection of the moon is shining on it. So I kind of get like maybe a little bit of a Lake Louise look by mixing turquoise and light blue. And again, you can just do it light blue, or you can do it dark blue, or you can do it turquoise, or you can do it, I don't know, whatever color you want. You could do it orange, then it'll just be unique to you. Okay, and then my rocks, my banks, I'm going to do a little bit of black, a little bit of brown. I want them to be really, really dark beside the water. And again, that has nothing to do, I'm not really thinking about the shadowing of like the moon peering down. I'm just thinking, wouldn't this color be so beautiful against that bright color? Would just make it pop more. That's all I'm really thinking about, is making the water really beautiful. Okay, and then I have my moon and my ring. So my moon, I'm going to do light gray with a little bit of white. And my ring, I'm going to again pick a color that I didn't really use. Moon. So that could be dark blue, because it still complements all my colors, but I didn't really use dark blue. It could be dark purple, be yellow, orange, pink. I feel like the darker colors I think would look really nice with it. So I'm actually going to do, I think I'm going to do dark purple. I, again, might change my mind after I see it. It might draw too much attention away from it, or it might frame it really nicely. We'll just have to see. So I've done step one, which is paint it. I also want to make sure that I paint my frame, my stand as well. You have to paint both sides, and you can either match the frame, or you can try and give it more of like a wood look and paint it brown or black. That's completely up to you. But you just want to make sure that you paint both sides. So I'm going to do my black. So I'm going to paint the one side, flip it over, paint the other side. Now, because this frame stands up, you are going to have to paint, unless you paint it black, I suppose, you are going to have to paint the sides as well, because let's say you paint them white, you'll be able to see the burnt side. So you need to make sure that you flip it over and paint all parts of it. So when I'm done, when this is dry, I flip it over, I paint this part, but then also you're going to want to paint in here too. If it's black, it doesn't matter as much, or brown, but if it's like white or purple or something, you'll be able to see it. So you just want to make sure that you paint that as well. Okay, so everything is painted. Now I want to see how everything looks. It's best to do this when everything is dry. Make sure your fingers are clean so you don't get paint on anything. I'm going to show you what everything looks like. Now, even though some pieces are wet, so I might have to go over and make some corrections. So wait till everything's dry before you stack it, and then that's when you can decide, do you want to do details or do you want to just glue it together? So I'm going to follow how I had it laid out, piece by piece. And I can see that there isn't tons of difference between these two, but just a little bit. But there's lots of difference in this dark one. So I might want to go back over and kind of think about like, oh, I actually put a lot of difference between these other 3 layers. I want to make sure that one, maybe that one needs to be more brown. So that's something, it's totally up to you though. Then you can also see like, oh, actually that forest does look dark enough. If it was too dark, then you'll kind of match with the sky, which I think needs some stars. I think it's just too dark. Oh, and I really like how my banks are really quite dark. I love how it pops with the lake or the river. And then purple, I kind of like that. I think it looks kind of cool, especially with the dark sky. And then I have my moon like that too. So this could be perfect. You could absolutely love it. So then you want to just unstack. So if you absolutely love it, this one was not dry yet, then you want to glue it together. So you take your glue and your applicator out, and you go layer by layer. And just glue it down. So you flip this over, take your glue, put it over top, put just a little tiny bit around here, and then put it down in your shadow box. Make sure it lines up, and then wait. Then do the next layer. But if you think, that's kind of, a little ordinary, I want to add some details to it, this is how you can do that. So if you wanted to add some stars in your night sky or clouds, this is when you take your brush and you go back over and you kind of add some little things. So stars can be made with the end of your paintbrush, but it can also be added by putting in some white paint, mixing in the water, and then just lightly tapping all over. I don't have water with me right now. I'm just using some wipes. So I'm just going to lightly put in the back of my paintbrush. And of course, because we're in the mountains and there's no cities, we have just a ton of stars at all different lights. We want some to be faint, we want some to be dark, we want some to be big, some to be small. So it's just really the first one that you put on is going to be the biggest star. So if you're going to do the Big Dipper, or if you're going to do another fun constellation, it's just that first dot that's really the biggest that you need to be careful for. And I kind of love the last few just because they're so faint. So there are my stars. And then if I think, gosh, these mountains probably would have maybe a little bit of snow, or maybe they would have like a rock slide or something kind of a little bit more interesting. So for this shadow box, what we did is we did snow in here. This is a glacier, and then the rocks were kind of pulled a little bit of like, so it'd be more edgy along here. We added some greenery in here to make it look more like a forest. And all we did is with this brush, very lightly just dry brushed a different color on it. So if I wanted to add some depth onto this one, maybe I would pick dark brown just because it's darker, and I would lightly put my brush in it, kind of tap it off on a Kleenex, and then all I do is I just go along the edge and kind of just brush down. And I just want to make sure I'm either going all one direction. So I've just added a teeny tiny amount. I'll do the same over here on this one. And maybe I'll go the different direction. And I'm just pulling just a slight bit of brown. Maybe this one, I want to add some white too, so maybe they're covered with snow. So I can just go along the edge like that. And pull it down. And I can do just a tiny little bit like that, or I can do a lot more. So just a tiny bit of detail like that makes it pop against this one, because now I don't just have the two colors, now I have a little bit of strokes over top. If I wanted to add some detail to my trees, let's say I just didn't want them to be all one solid color of green, I could take the light green, and again, just with my brush, just a tiny bit, maybe even dab it off on a Kleenex, I can just go over top, just pull from the edges down. And all it kind of does is it highlights where it was cut. And if I want, I can go in here to the, where it's not cut, I guess, more of the base, and just kind of dab. And if you don't like it, that's okay. Just wait till it dries and paint over top of it. Maybe for my banks, I kind of like the idea of maybe the shading, and I want to have some gray over top of them, just a little bit, like almost like moonlight kind of. So all I'm doing is I'm just taking my brush, starting at the top of the cut, and pulling down just lightly. So with this one, I just went just along the top of the cut like that, and I'm kind of angling my brush like that to go over top. Maybe I think these look just a little bit too blue and too perfect, so maybe I think there would be more edges along them, so I'm going to take black, kind of roughen them up a little bit. Such beautiful light gray. So this way they just look harder and rougher like the mountains do. And maybe this one I think, well, I want to do the whole thing. So I take my brush that I didn't wipe. And now the whole thing is kind of having lines go over top of it just to have it look a little rougher. The most important thing is not tons of paint, because if you have tons of paint, then it kind of glops on. Whereas if you have just a little bit, it's almost like you're getting each individual hair in the brush painting for you, which is the best part. Maybe I want this one to have a little blue. Just to change it up a little bit. Okay, so now I think, oh yeah, I like the detail. This looks great. Now I'm definitely going to, it's all dry. Now I can glue it. So I take my glue. I'm only holding it because it's not dry. So I don't want to put it down on the table. So I'm just putting a little bit here. If it dries and it like oozes out the side, that's okay because it dries clear. The most important thing is you want to make sure your edges are lining up as close as possible. Make sure you're kind of pushing down so that glue is adhering to it. Just for this one, a little side tip, I always put the moon in at this layer so that it's not so tall when you're placing it in. And maybe, sorry, I didn't even think about the moon. We gotta add some details to that. Some little. There. And then I do the exact same thing with my next piece. Put some glue on there. That's all the paint because that one piece was so wet. Glued on. And my next piece, my next piece, my next piece until it is all done. Now this is when you can decide, do you want to paint your outside? Do you have a whole bunch of paint that came over? If yes, then wait till it's all dry and then you can glue. Wait till it's all glued, dried, and then you can paint the outside. But that's all you're going to do. So you did all 3 steps. You painted, you added some detail, and now you're just gluing. Look at that, I even added the wrong one. No big deal. This one's next. Good thing I put them in order. Some people have actually, instead of having it on straight like this, they've actually turned it a little bit. So you have a different kind of range, I guess, just so that you can see different parts of it. Some people have even flipped it because they like it more over here. That's totally up to you. It's really neat how one shadow box can look completely different depending on who does it. So there's your completed shadow box. I hope you love it. Happy crafting!